the Trump campaign team came out and said we did not have meaningful access to the ballot, okay? And that is what the courts were trying to decide. Did they have meaningful? First of all, when you hear that, that means they had access. They just made up a thing called meaningful access. So as soon as I saw the word meaningful, I told you guys yesterday on the show, oh, that's just stretching, that's desperation, right? So then Rudy Giuliani, of all people, but also Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General of Florida, came out in a press conference yesterday and clarified why it was not meaningful access. They said, oh yeah, we could see the ballots. Because if you don't know, there's Republican and Democratic observers as they're counting the votes, as there should be. I wouldn't want to exclude Republicans from that because then there'd be more questions and there'd be more conspiracy theories. It's just not the right way to do it in any way, shape, or form. Republican and Democratic representatives should be in, not like a rando mob. And all right, we're gonna send in our militia to observe, and they've got weapons. Okay, fine, we'll send in Antifa to observe. And what? No, that's not how you do things, right? So they're doing it the right way. The extra request and why they went to the courts, as Rudy explained, was because they were not allowed to have binoculars as they observed the vote. Not joking. They were not allowed to have binoculars. What do you need binoculars for? Also, we were not allowed a telescope. I don't know how we're supposed to see Uranus without a telescope. And we can't even see our, I think you get it. So what the hell do you need binoculars? But this is the kind of stuff they go into courts with. That's why even in the most conservative jurisdictions with the most conservative justices, they're like, really? You came in here with a legal brief saying, yeah, I had access to the vote and I had ballots and I could see them counting the votes and it's all fine, but they didn't give me binoculars. Get the hell out of here, man. What are you wasting my time for?
So look, I'm having a hard time telling what the order of these breaking news updates are because they're coming from a lot of different places. Now I'm seeing a Pennsylvania judge has granted the Trump campaign's request to do up close observing of Philadelphia poll workers.
Oh, finally the binoculars. They found a conservative judge.
You can get the binoculars and you can use them from up to just 6 feet away. Microscopes, we're waiting for a district court judge ruling on that. Look, I think my gut is saying this is what that other one I talked about overruled, if I'm correct. But again, this is about observing it. We're gonna see Philadelphia, including Pennsylvania. We don't know exactly when we're going to be sure about the count. It's likely at this point that it's not gonna be until sometime relatively late tomorrow. But based on the trends that I've been seeing, and Cenk, maybe you disagree, these are other people running the numbers, not me. It is looking like in the end, Biden is going to win in Pennsylvania and that it's not necessarily gonna be incredibly close. We're gonna be talking about 100, 200,000 vote lead in the end. We don't know for sure, some of this are estimates, not just of the percentage that will go for Biden, but indeed of the votes remaining to be cast. But they can do this. I don't think it's going to overturn hundreds of thousands of votes. So bear in mind, the follow-up to that then will be Kayleigh McEnany, who on Fox News last night was saying, we're going to try to identify votes that were received after some kind of time and after the fact remove those from the total. And the Fox hosts, it was Brett Baer and Martha McCallum, did not seem to be buying that in real time. They didn't press her too hard. I guess there's a limit to how much they're willing to undercut the Trump legal strategy. But that's looking more and more like their only option in Pennsylvania as this continues.
Well, I know what their last legal stand is gonna be. Your Honor, all we wanted was sharks with frickin' laser beams on their heads, and they wouldn't give it to us. You can't count these votes without sharks with laser beams on their heads. Everybody knows that. And could they find one conservative judge be like, sharks with freaking laser beams? Yep, okay. But then it's gonna get overturned because even like Bush appointees, even Trump appointees, in almost every case are like, no, dude, just no, go home. All right, so now there's been updates on the numbers since we came on this morning. So Nevada was at 0.6, it's now at 1. So Biden has picked up 0.4 in Nevada, and now it's 87% reporting. That's just 1 extra percent. And in Pennsylvania, now 92% reporting, and Trump's lead is down to 1.8. So these are tiny movements. Biden gains 0.2 in Pennsylvania and 0.4 in Nevada. But every tiny movement matters here because these are all super close. Keep in mind, guys, that it is still possible that Biden wins most of these. In fact, I've seen the same numbers that John has. People are saying that he's likely to win Pennsylvania comfortably at the end. He's still got a better than 50% chance of winning Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. So he could at the end be over 300 electoral votes. And that's certainly what Republicans would call a landslide if it was the shoe was on the other foot. But we're honest and realistic, unlike the other side. When you're winning by 0.6 and it turns out it was 1.2 instead, and yeah, you might have won all those states, but you won them by tiny margins. This was not a blowout. This was a shockingly close election.
So it looks like, I'm assuming, I don't think we're gonna get more votes during this live video, but the update was to increase the lead for Joe Biden in Nevada, which is not nothing. And we do know there was a chance that we should have had updated information from Georgia because supposedly as of 19 minutes ago, they were supposed to have the finished count. And I believe the only things remaining from this morning to right now were 61,367 outstanding mail-in absentee ballots, which if you're looking at the numbers, I would guess have a very good chance of swinging the state to Joe Biden, if that is all that remains to be counted. But we should have the numbers by now, we don't, so it's possible that there are other votes as well.
So the reason why we always emphasize where the vote's coming from, and it always feels like it's to the advantage of the Democrats, but it isn't, as you can see in this case, is because, well, right now in Pennsylvania, the outstanding votes are coming from Philly. Philly is overwhelmingly Democratic. So that's why Biden is gonna make up a huge lead. Again, they all voted at the same time. It's just a matter of when they're counting them. Same thing in Georgia, they're waiting on Atlanta. Atlanta is overwhelmingly Democratic, and that's why Biden's very likely to take the lead, or in the case of Georgia, just likely. Pennsylvania is very likely. But in Arizona, as I told you earlier, they're waiting on a couple of counties, including Maricopa, which is not as heavily Republican as Philadelphia is heavily Democratic, but it is definitely more Republican. So that's why Trump is picking up votes as they count those votes. So it's the same standard. It just happens to be that in some areas are Republican, some areas are Democratic, and that's why you see the phenomenon that you see.
Breaking news.
Here we go.
Of the minor variety, a little bit more information coming from Nevada. Biden lead over Trump has shrunk slightly from 12,042 votes to 11,458 votes. It's not much, it's a little bit tighter.
Yeah, well, it moved a percentage this much too. I just told you Biden's lead was 1.0, it's now 0.9, okay, in Nevada. So, and that's why you'll see these anomalies. And the fact that it is happening in different directions in different states should give rational people comfort. Obviously, it doesn't for the Trump people. So for example, at one point, Trump had a 15-point lead in Pennsylvania because they'd only done the in-person voting and only reported from the Republican areas, right? And again, it's nothing nefarious, it's just the nature of how slow the count is in those areas. But in Arizona, Joe Biden had a 9-point lead for a long time. That's because they'd mainly counted the Democratic areas, and now they're counting the Republican areas, and the lead is down to 2 points, right? Same exact phenomenon in Arizona and Pennsylvania, happening in different directions for the parties. Most rational people go, oh, okay. The Trump people go, pop the popcorn, right? And stop the count. So it makes, obviously you all know, because you haven't lost your mind, that makes no sense. You know, for the folks who are not, look, I know that the Trump folks are really sensitive to charges of them not being bright. But I'm trying to find a polite way to say it. But if you can't understand simple concepts like you should have the same standard in Arizona and Pennsylvania and count all the votes instead of being hypocritical in the two different states, I don't know what to call you. What do you want me to call you? Do you want me to call you smart? Can you really say that with a straight face? Well, I don't know what honest, is that what you want me to call you? This is such an obvious hypocrisy. If you can't see it, you're not very smart. And if you see it and don't care, you're not very honest. Those are super uncomfortable facts that I'm saying about half the country, but they're obvious. It's like saying, I know that 2 + 2 = 4 offends you, but I can't say it equals 5 because it just doesn't.
Yeah.
So, and even let's look at other numbers in Wisconsin. And so this will lead me to asking about if there are rational Republicans left, like, what are you guys doing? Where are you? And what's your stance on this? So in Wisconsin, Biden's finalish lead seems to have been around 20,000 votes. He won, Wisconsin's done. He won by about 20,000 votes, right? And they're saying we want to recount. Even Governor Scott Walker, I mean, you guys know, remember, he's the one that busted the unions, took the call from the fake Koch brothers, said, what can I do for you? Massively right-wing, totally Republican, totally controlled by any Republican donor that has enough money to control, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That guy, he tweeted out, look, we did 2 recounts in Wisconsin recently in the last decade. One changed 131 votes, the other one changed 300 votes. There ain't no way in the world, he said, 20,000 would be a tough hurdle to clear. In other words, there ain't no way in the world that you're gonna flip 20,000 votes. So apparently there's a couple of Republicans left in the country that still have hung on to the idea of rationality and math and numbers. But if the rest of you are out there and you say, Cenk, you're being so unfair. No, I get that that's hypocritical, and I don't think that's right. I'm an American, I believe in counting all the votes. You might want to say something, and you might want to say it now, as opposed to telling us later, oh yeah, I thought that. I mean, I didn't say anything when it mattered. When my party was losing its mind, I didn't object at all. I actually was quiet on purpose to kind of egg them on. But later, in hindsight, I'll claim that I never believed that. No. I mean, the funny thing is, there are folks, and because of Fox News, that say Joe Biden wasn't tough enough on the rioting and the looting. Joe Biden condemned it. So first of all, Constantly. Joe Biden didn't do the rioting or the looting. He literally, I mean, just think about it for a second. Remove yourself from political talking points and think about it rationally if we lived in a normal, logical world. Did Joe Biden ask anybody to riot? No. Does he control people who loot? No. Does he have anything to do with them? Is he in any way connected to them? No. Does he want them to do it? No, it actually hurts his campaign. You know, whether it's right or wrong, et cetera, it hurts his campaign, there's no question about it. If he could, he would have no one riot or loot on just political calculation alone. They're like, no, you're responsible and you have to condemn them. He's like, okay, this is so irrational, but fine, I'll condemn them. And then they say you didn't condemn them enough. What does that even mean? What was he supposed to do? After condemning them, find somebody and slap them? Like what? Just like say it louder. I condemn the rioting. No, and try it again, Joe. I condemn the rioting. Getting there. Okay, so that is the expectation that they have of Democrats, to condemn super loudly things they didn't do. What I'm asking you to do, well, if that's your standard, why aren't so-called rational Republicans right now condemning that outrageous, un-American hypocrisy of Trump and his supporters now, saying that we should stop the count in Pennsylvania, recount in Wisconsin, keep counting in Arizona, and stop the count in Georgia? You lose any claim to credibility or rationality if you don't object to that.
Yeah, well, bear in mind I don't think that's what they want. I don't think that's what they're going for. I think that a lot of this is just designed to produce enough chaos and have, like, they don't need their followers to be sure what's happening or what they're supposed to be saying or what would be consistent. Their followers don't demand it either. Both are focused on winning. Their followers will say start the count or say stop the count. When they're told, they'll switch. We've always been war at East Asia territory. They just want to win. And honestly, like, I'm following both the count, which looks like it's still around 11,500 in Nevada, but also the legal challenges. So apparently they challenged for things like the binoculars and stuff like that. So Philadelphia shut down the counting to reconfigure so that they could come in and do that. Then this other judge overruled that and said, no, that's crazy or whatever, we're not gonna allow it. So And now they're not gonna have the observers. So the thing is, we were joking about the binoculars. Why would you need that? You wouldn't need that to have any better sense of what's going on with the count. But what you would need to demand that for is to get a judge to overturn it, because that's more useful to you. Binoculars to count the vote isn't useful. Being able to say, look, a judge just stopped us from having observers, that is useful for making your followers believe that there's some sort of cover up going on, that something shady is happening. You demand insane things knowing that it'll be struck down, in the same way that people will on the right will tweet things that clearly go against the terms of service so that they will be struck down or hidden or censored or whatever you want to say by the social media platform, because it's more useful to present yourself as the victim. They're doing that here legally as well, asking for insane things so that they'll lose, so that their followers will not trust the judge's input. And then all of it theoretically can go to the Supreme Court, where they have the supermajority that they need.
And guys, understand that what they're asking for in Pennsylvania is not, okay, now let's recount those 130,000 votes with binoculars. They're saying, since we weren't allowed binoculars in the first place, you have to throw out 130,000 votes. Well, that again, that's doubly irrational. It makes no sense at all unless you're desperate not to count the votes in Philadelphia because you hate democracy and you want to cheat. And that's just the reality of it. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.